On August 11th, Tim Pool made a video about how he had to accept that Star Wars is dead to him and he no longer has a strong interest in it. August 13th, I saw multiple YouTube thumbnails mock eulogizing Star Wars. I felt an awakening and I had to act. That was just my little intro. I'm Matthew, author, artist, and commentator, and these are my offhand remarks on how Star Wars has outgrown you. By the way, one of the silliest things to come out of Solo is from the trailer, and I think I've talked about this before, is I'm a driver, I'm a pilot, I'm a whatever, and that partly inspired my, what is it? What do I say? Author, artist, and commentator. Anyway, but so yeah, to clarify, I did listen to Tim's full video, and that was on his secondary channel, the Timcast channel, and after I heard him out, I understood what he said, and it was very reasonable because he's an intelligent, reasonable person, even if I can't understand the reasons that he doesn't like Last Jedi. I think he's got some biases stopping him from seeing stuff clearly, but, you know, whatever, that's the same kind of argument you can have about politics with different people that, you know, if only they could see, if only I could make them see or argue with them until they realize that, you know, this thing really is good. So I think Tim Pool and I are about the same. I think he's 33 and I'm 30, about to turn 31 in a few months, unfortunately. Anyway, I mean, it beats the alternative, right? Anyway, so he grew up watching the prequels like I did. He likes the originals best, I think. But he appreciated the prequels, and he was like, yeah, some people complained and whatever, but I really liked them, and I thought they were cool, and they did some really neat stuff in it, and, you know, it was hit and miss, but, you know, fun ideas, and I didn't have a problem with Jar Jar or whatever, so, same thing with me, basically, except for I really liked the prequels. I've watched Attack of the Clones so many darn times. It's definitely one of my favorites. Revenge of the Sith is tough. The Revenge of the Sith book by Matthew Stover, the novelization of the movie, is amazing. If you want just like good Star Wars and you like any Star Wars at all, I think you'd appreciate Stover's Revenge of the Sith. And like it goes into there's so much extra in it, and I don't mean that in the late 2018 meaning of extra. I mean, like, there's so much more. It's an expanded edition of the movie because it goes into so much more. It's like, I think it's 14 hours versus the 3 hours of the movie, or almost 3 hours, and you get all these insights into Palpatine, into Padme, into Obi-Wan, into Anakin, and how people see them at the time, and it's really, really dope. Anyway, that's not what I'm talking about. Why am I accusing these people who think that Star Wars is dead of it not being dead, and why am I saying that Star Wars has outgrown you if you're one of these people who think Star Wars is dead? I'll tell you why. First I want to get out of the way my valid criticisms of Star Wars after the Disney purchase. I don't think they should have canceled Clone Wars. That was dumb. They should have done at least a season or two more to really wrap it up, because the season 5 ending was it was fine, but it's kind of a downer ending, and I think had Filoni been able to go ahead and Filoni and the team working on Clone Wars been able to finish Clone Wars, it would have given them more time to make Rebels or whatever they were going to make better. I think there were some missteps with Rebels, particularly in the 4th season, or I guess maybe the middle of the 3rd season, and then part of the 4th season was not so great, but it had a really strong finish, which I've talked about previously. The worst mistake, in my opinion, was the fact, here's going to be two things, and I don't have a problem with Kathleen Kennedy. I don't really know her that well. Apparently she has a very impressive filmography of films that she's produced on, so at least she's competent at that. I mean, she produced the Indiana Jones movies, which a lot of people love, especially people who probably hated Crystal Skull, which she also produced, and Spielberg and Lucas were involved with also. Besides that, I don't know, she's done a bunch of other stuff. And, my point is, people who, hate the modern Star Wars probably love, or there's probably a great cross-section of them, or overlapping, of the people who hated Crystal Skull and, Last Jedi, and yet those people probably loved The Force Awakens and, Rogue One, which is interesting. Anyway, Kathleen Kennedy, I don't think she's the problem. I think Lucas being gone is part of the problem, because for his flaws, which, as I understand it, he didn't take advice well from others around him when he was working on the prequels, and that wasn't good. But he made some amazing things happen on Clone Wars, being the executive producer and letting Filoni do the show running. Because what Lucas did in that circumstance was he got everybody together and he said, guys, this is what we're going to talk about. And then they would plan it all out. And he would have some wild ideas and he'd say, I want you to make it happen. And then they would make it happen and it would be fantastic. We got some of the best Star Wars in the Clone Wars, and that was a lot of that had to do with Lucas's involvement. Now, I understand why Lucas stepped down. He wanted to get married, have another kid, do his family thing. He's he's way too old to be doing some of that, but it's his business, not mine. So, more power to him. I hope he's happy. But I don't think, Kathleen Kennedy and Lucas had the video when he handed over the presidency of Lucasfilm to her, and she claimed that he would be her Yoda, and I don't know if Lucas wouldn't have made the same missteps here as Kathleen Kennedy has made. And I don't think the firing of directors is so much a problem. I think it's more the hiring of directors, and I don't really know the source for some of the issues that they had, but I saw Solo, and I don't know how much of that movie was reshot, and it was fine. It was a fun movie. Rogue One, there were reshoots on that, kind of extensive reshoots, changed the tone a little bit of it, and I heard they pulled it back and wanted to make it more like a mainline Star Wars movie, like a trilogy, Rogue One was the first Star Wars story, so, it's kind of silly for me to say that, but they wanted to make it more like the saga films, and I think Solo, they ended up making a little more like the saga films. It seems like there's a weird aversion to risk, and I think that would have been averted had they not chosen to do a Han Solo movie, and if they'd done something like more out there and as far away from the Skywalker saga and like the 60 years of canon that we're dealing with, from episode 1 to episode 9, I guess you could say. But I think Lucas probably would have made the same mistake that Kennedy made, or he made a mistake that Kennedy went ahead and made, which was this. So I guess maybe he is her Yoda. Lucas didn't really plan out the prequel trilogy, and he winged the original trilogy. He had a ginormous script that he split up, and he took the third act Death Star and put it in the first act, at the end of the first act, that he tweaked a little to make A New Hope, and he wanted to make it as a standalone thing to see if it could survive, and if it did, he wanted to do these sequels. But you can check out Star Wars Explained for this. Splendor of the Mind's Eye, he talks about that book. That book was written as a super low budget sequel to A New Hope, or to Star Wars at the time. I refused to call it A New Hope because it was Star Wars when I was 7. Anyway, so Empire Strikes Back was kind of a fluke. Like, he had planned for Han Solo not being there because Harrison Ford didn't want to do it, and he didn't even have a super solid idea. And like in Empire Strikes Back, when Yoda says, or when I think Ben says, no, there was another Hope, another Skywalker, that's actually Luke's sister, who isn't Leia, who's like in the Outer Rim, and she was supposed to come back at like the end of Return of the Jedi. And like Lucas had all these crazy, not even they're crazy ideas, they're just all these ideas, and he wouldn't stick to them. Like, he, for whatever reason, felt, and I don't really fault him for it, really, because I think it turned out to be a pretty great trilogy. The original trilogy, he just like winged a lot of it and kept going in all these different directions, and maybe that's just where the story took him, and he deviated from the outline. And being an author, being a writer myself, sometimes stuff deviates from the plot line, but he was also a young man at that time. I would think that being a more seasoned creator, he would have, with the prequel trilogy, really had things a lot more planned out, and apparently he didn't. It's kind of clear in some areas that he didn't. And anyway, you would have thought like there would have been a super clear plan. Like, this is my treatment for the entire trilogy. Let me break it into 3 chunks, and this will be the first, the second, the third installment, and then these things will happen in them, and then we'll, it'll dovetail very gently into A New Hope. Which, even stuff like the timeline, like how old is Obi-Wan when he's a Padawan in episode 1, and how old is he at the end of episode 4, which is like, maybe 14 years later, 13 to 14 years later. I guess the Clone Wars. No, I'm counting all that. Like 13 years later, because he looks like he's in his 20s, and if he's like 38, and then 20 years later he's 58, I know they've retconned it so like the Tatooine sun burned him up, but like, it's a little silly, isn't it? Anyway, or maybe Anakin could have been much older when he fell, like, in his 30s or something. You can have a kid at 30. I wouldn't advise it, but you could. Anyway, so, like Lucas, Kennedy did not make sure that there was a single structured plan for the sequel trilogy. But that doesn't mean it's not been pretty good. Last Jedi is my favorite movie. I think the writing of it is incredible. I think if you don't see how the writing of it is incredible, or how the writing of it is incredible, it's because you're holding on to too much, and you're expecting too much, and you're expecting certain things that you want to happen. I went to The Last Jedi. I think I was, I was full spoilers from listening to the Making Star Wars podcast. So I was full of all these spoilers, and I knew things that were going to happen. I don't think, that certainly didn't affect it negatively for me. I think it had a really positive effect, and I think the really positive effect was that I had an inkling of some things that were going to happen. They actually did a pretty good job. I don't know if they didn't have enough information, or if they just chose to hold back. Jason Swank. Jason Ward. He didn't share all that he could, I think. And I kind of appreciated that, because there were some moments that I didn't see coming at all that completely blindsided me in the theater or at the drive-in, and I absolutely loved it. And Force Awakens, the first half of it is great. I loved all the stuff with Finn, Rey, and Poe, and then when they get aboard the ship and the Rathtars and stuff with Han, it kind of fell apart for me. I just don't like it as much. My heart isn't in it, because I don't really like Han that much, and I wanted Luke to be there. And it's not Lion Johnson's fault that Luke wasn't there. It was J.J. Abrams' fault, because for whatever reason, Kennedy goes to him and she says, the way that Kennedy won J.J. Abrams over, which I think he's a competent filmmaker, I just don't particularly like some of the stuff that he does, but he does it well. But anyway, what he did was he had turned down the offer from Lucasfilm and Kennedy to direct, and maybe direct, write, and maybe executive produce, I don't remember, or be a producer on Force Awakens, EP7 as they called it. But she asked him, who is Luke Skywalker? And he said, wow, who is Luke Skywalker? That's an incredible question that I want to explore. And then he and Kasdan together proceeded to write Episode 7, which to me does not address who is Luke Skywalker. So that's not really Kathleen Kennedy's fault. And maybe she just wanted a star to knock it out of the park, and that's why she didn't replace him. Or maybe it was too late, or maybe it had to do with Kasdan, I don't know. But anyway, all those flaws aside, here's the thing. The story in Force Awakens sets us up to go into The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi has an incredible follow-up on all the characters we were introduced to in The Force Awakens. Now, again, you may not like the universe that was set up for you and for me and for Rian Johnson in Episode 7. I think a lot of you did, but you may not like certain aspects of it. But Johnson went ahead and he took all these principal characters and he put them through their paces and he tested them and he explored them and made them more real. I've talked about the oh gosh, I can't remember if it's Lessons from the Screenplay or Just Right, but both of those YouTube channels do an incredible, and I'll link whichever one or both of them, an incredible analysis of narrative structure. Is it called narrative structure for characters? Anyway, but what you do is you take a character, you say, what do they want? What do they need? How do those things conflict within themselves, with the world outside of them, with the characters around them? And then you, through the movie, you have characters who are around them. You put them in situations that enable what they want and challenge them to change to what they need. Because what they want is basically at odds with what they need. And that's true for all the characters. And it's an incredible thing to watch because every piece fits together. Yes, even Canto Bight and DJ and getting with DJ instead of the other guy fits together to push all these different characters. And the cool thing is, because I think there was a central theme to Last Jedi, which was kind of accepting, well, kind of acceptance, kind of failure, like learning to live with yourself in the face of your failures. Like learning to accept your faults and your mistakes and your foibles and move on and do the best you can. That's kind of a through line for everybody, and everybody's stories happening in parallel to each other all inform on one another, and it's like this really awesome like feedback cycle. So like it's a really well written movie. There's stupid little things like Tim Pool mentions, after the the ship gets hit, Finn and Rose had all these stormtroopers around them and they're gone. It's like, so what? So what? Who cares? That kind of stuff happens in movies all the time. It's a dumb like plot hole based on like there was a deleted scene. So it's like, yeah, I get it. It's kind of frustrating, but it doesn't really matter. It's not part of the story. It's okay, look, those guys are out of the way and now it's a clean slate for them to do whatever they have to do. And anyway, the story of where it's going is great. The only thing I like, actually, one of the things I liked best about Last Jedi is it like pushed back against all these things that were in The Force Awakens that I felt were like silly or dumb or like not answered. And Johnson was like, hey, Abrams or somebody, like, why didn't you answer these things? You should have answered them. It was a weaker thing because you didn't. And like, boom, here we go. And, people say he's aggressive and he's a leftist. And I don't like that, honestly. Johnson, I mean, he seems like an okay guy, except he doesn't. Because he seems like he's, hyper partisan and a bit ideological, and less willing to have a balance. But like his affect at the same time is like very gentle. So it's kind of hard to tell if you were having a good faith conversation with him. Could you reach agreements? Could you reach middle ground? I don't know. Because for the most part, it's just people calling him Lion Johnson and cursing him for being an SJW, which is stupid. Because how are you going to change people's minds if you're just attacking them? You can't. You need to have a relationship with somebody in order to affect change. And in doing so, you're going to be vulnerable to being changed by them as well, which is a good thing. That's how we grow. That's how we learn. By the way, I'm still I'm still trying to get really to develop this point about why has Star Wars grown past you. Star Wars has grown past you because it's not relying on coddling you anymore. In The Last Jedi, Johnson challenges all these things that Abrams refused to. I think the reason so many people love The Force Awakens was because it coddled them. It gave them exactly what they wanted. It gave them exactly what they expected. And I wasn't looking for that. I was waiting for George Lucas to give me more Star Wars like Clone Wars, where crazy, unexpected things happen. And yeah, I mean, it's not completely unique all the time, and it dipped into different genres and stuff, but it always threw a different light on Star Wars. It's like, look, we're dealing with these same characters for all these seasons, and it's 3 years of their lives in this war. Like, we're going to show you a lot of different sides of them. Who knew that Obi-Wan had a girlfriend that he almost turned down or like backed away from the Order, like Anakin could have also? These are all totally unexpected things that Lucas brought to light. I can't think of anything else at the moment. Like Maul coming back and Sidious's dark dealings and showing Yoda going and learning from Qui-Gon about how to become one with the Force and those sorts of things. Like, in my opinion, that sort of stuff should have been in episode 3, but whatever. Again, showing the lack of planning. And there's like a deleted scene, and it's in a book, or it's in the Stover book, but still, I wasn't happy. I was very disappointed by that. But anyway, Johnson is pushing Star Wars into new realms, and like Rebels kind of did too, honestly. Like, as much criticism as I have for Rebels, I still appreciate so many of the things in it. And so many of the things that people hated, I really enjoyed in Rebels, except for Ezra. Ezra was okay sometime, but Ezra was definitely not my favorite character. I was there for Kanan. I was there for Hera. I wanted more of that. I was there for the Mando stuff with Sabine. Ezra was just like, I don't know if he was like just supposed to appeal to kids too much, or if he was supposed to be like on the hero's journey more than everybody, and like I'm a little tired of that by now, or at least the approach they did with him. I don't know, but just I had some issues with him. Taylor Gray did some good work, and he wasn't bad. It was just, I mean, ultimately Filoni directed the things out of him, or I guess there were different directors at some point, like after season 2, maybe? Anyway, it doesn't really matter. There were definite missteps with him, and they marred the experience for me. The Kanan comic by, it's a 12-part Marvel Star Wars Kanan comic book series, miniseries, by, I cannot remember his name. I've been meaning to reread it. It's really good. But he's the Gargoyles guy, I'm pretty sure. And he worked on the first season of Rebels, and then he moved on. I don't quite know why. Anyway, but yeah. So, Star Wars is going in different directions. We've got these 2 Game of Thrones guys doing their, I think, at least 2 movies. I don't think they're going to be, it's a little unclear what they're going to be. Another really good writer and director, is he played previously in Clone Wars. He was Happy Hogan. You got to know who I'm talking about. Whatever his name is, Swingers, Chef. Anyway, that guy, Jungle Book, Lion King guy, him. Man, I'm really disappointed I can't remember his name right now because I remembered it before. Anyway, he is going to do, he's not Ron Howard, darn it. He, I think, is going to do a really good job with his stories. I mean, he's a very competent writer and director, and they're giving him a big budget to do 10 episodes, and 10 episodes. That's kind of like a Downton Abbey sort of thing, and I think it'll be cool for Star Wars to do like prestige entertainment projects like once a year, and they take a couple months to film it, put it together, do whatever, and then they just show it, 10 episodes at a time on the streaming service. Here's the 10 new episodes for this year, and boom, here they are, here's our story. And then maybe, 6 months down the line, they produce another set, and then they reduce it, or they release it like every year on, at the same month or whatever. Like, that would be really cool. That's a great direction for it to be going on the Disney streaming service. You've got Star Wars Resistance, which I haven't heard too much of. It sounds like it's going to be way more geared towards kids, which is fine because kids are allowed to have their stuff too. We've got, his live action show going on the streaming service, which will be great. I want that to be a fantastic thing. And if, kids get something for them that's just tailor-made for little kids, that's great, man. Like, they should totally enjoy that. And, do different things with it. And, I just won't pay attention. I'll watch the live action one. And then, Johnson's trilogy. Hopefully this man plans out his friggin' trilogy. I think there's a good chance he will. Seems like he's not an idiot. He seems like a smart guy. So we'll see if he does that. Not implying that people who don't plan out their trilogies are idiots, but just to, I think maybe the backlash of The Last Jedi coupled with his skill as a writer and creative, it'll make sure that he does things a little better. And he steps up his game. And I heard that's going to be skewed towards like a younger audience and be a little more fantasy-like. So hopefully it'll happen far away from the Skywalker saga in the 9 movies. But anyway, yeah, guys, Star Wars isn't going anywhere. And I had a bunch of thumbnails I screenshotted, and hopefully they've been running through the course of this video. And it's like over 2 years, because Carrie Fisher died in 2016, and there was a playlist of like 70 videos from this one group, and they had a tribute to her, and they had stuff from, she died in 2016, December? Yeah, I guess so. Man. Is that right? It must have been. Anyway, but, so, they've been going from then through the 2017, 2018, where they're just harping on Star Wars, when we'll start, so like a while back, like shortly after, so fresh into 2017, I think, is like, when will Star Wars die? And then it's like, Star Wars is dead 1, Star Wars is dead 2, look at the toy graveyard at Star Wars. Like, how is Star Wars about toys? That's not what it's about. Toys are an aspect of the marketing that, like, people with more dollars than sense, like, spend hundreds or thousands of dollars a year to buy Star Wars toys so that they can show that they're better fans than other people or something, because they're obsessed and they need to own it tangibly. And yet there are so many toy collectors who don't carry the lessons of Star Wars with them. Star Wars, to me, is a myth, and it's a beautiful mythology, and there's, like, great morality, interesting heroes and villains, and, like, things that I see parallels to Star Wars in life, like, you know, not all the time, but they're definitely there, and they're powerful, and they have meaning, and they resonate with me, and I don't know, Star Wars makes me think about life a little bit differently. I'm also a person of faith, a POF, so you can't criticize me, otherwise you'll be oppressing a minority. So, you know, as a POF, I already have, like, one way to, like, know how to deal with the hardships of life, but then I also have Star Wars, which has lasers and, you know, action and adventure and laser swords, and it's really cool too to watch, and, you know, I can't open up the Bible and, you know, see lightsabers. So anyway, yeah, Star Wars has changed. It's grown past you. If you can't accept it, then, you know, it doesn't really matter, because I'm accepting it, and we may be peers, or I may be a lot younger than you as far as age is concerned. I mean, peers age-wise. But I've got kids, and they like parts of Star Wars, and that's okay. And I don't need to pressure them into being little acolytes of the Beyond, or acolytes of the Force, or, you know, join the Church of the Force, because it doesn't really matter to me that they enjoy the same fan things that I do, and that they enjoy them in the same way, because the story matters to me, and it's precious to me, and I love all the different takes on it, and all the different manifestations of the concepts that have been explored, and, like, some of the books too in the last, since like after New Dawn. So New Dawn was the first canon, new canon book. Fabulous book. And then there's been, I haven't read all of them, but there's been some really great ones that have come out after that too. Gosh, what was the last one I read? Oh, Last Shot with Han and Lando was so cool. And it was interesting, and they're not characters I appreciate that much, but I really liked what they did with them in there. So it's like, I can get the whole range of stuff out of Star Wars, and I think it's really interesting what they're doing, and I think it's healthy and good, and I like it, and I think you're going to see that Star Wars isn't going to die. When will Star Wars die? You know, some of you people ask, or, you know, like, let me put it this way. I won't be shocked if next year I see a 1977 to 2019 Star Wars is dead, rest in peace Star Wars, again from these people. Or these very same people will be in 6 to 9 months saying, oh, Star Wars is alive, it's wonderful, it's great, I love it. And, or they'll be quiet because they'll begrudgingly appreciate things. But even if they don't, it doesn't matter, because Star Wars doesn't need you. There are new fans being born. There's new avenues for Star Wars to, like, you know, be presented, and people are going to enjoy it, or they're not, and it doesn't really matter, because, you know, I don't, like I said, I'm a POF, so I don't get my validation as a human being out of Star Wars being good, or making money, or anything like that. It's just a thing I really enjoy, and I'm happy to enjoy it, and to be loving it, while you're crying tears that, you know, I don't know, Rey isn't hot enough, or, you know, she should be submitting herself to Kylo, or, you know, whatever. Doesn't matter. Kathleen Kennedy's a feminazi. I don't think she is, guys. Like, look at the stuff she's done. She's mostly produced movies that are mostly male-oriented, that are mostly male-starring, where the men probably make more than the women. So, you know, I don't know. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it. But that's not really the way I want to end things. I'll ask a question. Do you think Star Wars is dead? Do you think Kennedy killed it? I don't know. A bunch of other stuff. Oh, man, I had this great other intro that I was going to use. Oh, yeah, here we go. Star Wars isn't dead. Kathleen Kennedy didn't betray it, and Lyndon Johnson didn't kill it. Oh, man, I totally skipped over that part. Anyway, doesn't matter. I think that's great. Anyway, do you think Star Wars is dead? Do you think Kathleen Kennedy betrayed it? And do you think Lyndon Johnson killed it? I want to know, and I want like reasons why. Don't just say yes, yes, yes. I want yes because this, yes because that, and then yes because, I don't know. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you can watch every video as it becomes available. Thank you so much for your time. If you enjoy my work, please give it a like and share it. If you'd like to chat, hit me up in the comments or tweet me at RC_MUN. That is at RC Moon. Be well and remember, don't curse that darkness, shine your light. Until next time.